Welcome, you guys. Today is another live session here in Science Course. I appreciate seeing some more people joining us, and thank you. I hope this is going to be worthwhile for you. Hopefully you've been got some questions that I can help you with, or I'm going to go over a topic that maybe you're struggling a little bit with as well. My name is Amy Defoe. I'm one of the science teachers here at Graduation Alliance, and just a little heads up, I might have you in my science. I might be your science teacher, or you might have another science teacher, and that's totally great. We all have the same curriculum, and I'm going to go through some of the assignments that you have as well, and I'll still be able to answer any questions that you have as well. So just a little heads up about that. Doesn't matter who is your particular teacher. These sessions, again, are used as a way to help you guys get questions that you might need answered. Also to give you a little bit more information on the curriculums that we have here at Graduation Alliance. So just a little housekeeping little notes that we have here. As you guys know, as we're using Zoom here, you have the option to, as you can see, like me, you can see me, which is great. I'm a real person, here we are. But also you can show yourself. You have the ability to show using your camera, or you can not have access to that. Whatever is your comfort level, it's up to you, and you can interchange throughout the session if you would like to. Same thing with your audio. You can mute yourself, which is a great idea if you've got, background noise going on or you have to do something. And you can always take yourself off, unmute if you want to ask a question, if you want to jump in on the conversation. So make sure that you're using those tools to your advantage. You also have an option to send a chat, and I sent a little chat welcoming everybody here today. So you can also, if it's easier for you to type out your thoughts and share that way to get your questions or give feedback, you're welcome to do so there. So you'll probably see I'll be glancing up and down, making sure I'm checking through the chat through today's session as well, okay? These sessions are recorded, so we are being recorded right now, and we record them so that lots of good reasons. One is if you missed a session and you want to come back to it, you'll have the option to do that. Also, we keep these because maybe later on you want to go back to maybe something I showed you, or go over something that I reviewed, so you have the option to go back and review these. And all of them are being, and in the other core classes as well, they're all being recorded and stored into this great little library. So we're going to have awesome resources for you guys and all of your different subjects available to you. So this is really great. So again, I appreciate you guys joining today. I hope this is helpful. And again, the agenda that I have kind of set up for today is, today I'm going to talk about DNA and kind of the organization of living organisms. And then I'll go over a couple different assignments, lessons in that first chunk. And then I'll open it up to questions that you might have about a particular concept, lesson, or even an activity that you're not sure about, so that you can then get your questions answered. And then I'm going to come back and do a little mini lesson on a skill. And today we're going to talk about organization, which kind of goes along with talking about DNA and cells, as you will see. And then, of course, we'll end today's session with another opportunity for you to ask questions. So as we're going through this session, I think it's great. Always keep in the back of your mind, think about where you're at in the course, and is there something that you didn't understand, or you're stuck on an assignment right now? Think about that so that you have the option to get it answered. I can go through it with you. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started here today. Again, I hope everybody's Thursday is going great. Okay, so we're going to talk about, first we're going to talk about cells, okay? When we talk about cells, all organisms are made up of cells, or a cell. It's kind of crazy to think that, yes, there are some organisms that their whole entire body, who they are, what they are, is just one tiny little cell. And another thing about cells is, can we see cells? It's so crazy to think about. We could say, yeah, we can see some cells, but most cells, we need to use some type of technology or a tool to be able to see them. So we're talking about these things that are so tiny. I'm going to show you a little visual about that here in just a second. So one of the characteristics of life, when we talk about how do we determine if something is an organism and is living, and one of the characteristics that we say is that they are made up of cells, or a cell. So that's the big thing, is all organisms are made up of a cell or of many cells. And going back here to some little vocabulary, we have unicellular, which is one cell, and multicellular, which means many cells. So again, maybe you've heard of, I always like this when we talk about vocabulary, especially in science. I like to break the words up here. When we talk about uni, maybe you have seen, maybe you've even ridden, oh my gosh, that would be so hard, one of those unicycles. So when you think of like a bicycle, is two, uni means one, so like a one wheel. Same thing with cells. So unicellular is just one cell makes up that whole entire organism. An example of this is what we call an amoeba. Maybe you've seen a picture like this, and it's kind of like this tiny little blob, and that's the whole entire organism, and it's just one cell that makes it up. You think about us, we're made up of many different cells that make up our body. You can see, my skin cells and my hair cells and that kind of stuff, but an amoeba is a one-celled organism. So unicellular, whole body is made up of just this, and this is what we call the pseudopod. It's the way that the organism it moves. It's like a little foot. They call it a false foot. Okay, just an example. And then of course here we have an example, hello, welcome, of a chimpanzee, and of course multicellular, just like us, very much more complex. Okay. Okay, before we get to that, I want to show you guys just what we're talking about here when we talk about cells. Here it is. Okay. Can you guys see this on my screen? It shows like there's a virus. I'm gonna go all the way out. Can you guys see that? Yes, awesome, thank you, appreciate it. Okay, so we're gonna look at just the size, cell size, just to see, kind of give you a little picture. Up here we have kind of like a little gradient here that's kind of giving us a size of what we're looking at. So an example here, we've all seen like a grain of rice or a coffee bean, okay? And then of course when we're typing, most of us know about times 12 point, there it is. So as we, let me scooch this over just a little bit so we can see a bigger picture of it. As we move in, so as we're moving in, see we're if you notice this up here, it's gonna show us kind of our sizing here. As we get smaller and smaller, we're zooming in more and more. Here's an example. So I showed you that picture, that unicellular organism, an amoeba. Okay, so think about the size frame of that as we get zooming in closer and closer. So now as we started out into that one cell, now we're moving into this tiny little square here. And human egg, so that's an example of a cell that some humans, females, have. Okay, so thinking about the size of these cells, okay. Skin cell, a sperm cell. As we were zooming in even closer, there's a red blood cell, there's a chromosome, which we're going to talk about with DNA, mitochondria, which is a part of the cell. You've probably heard of E. coli, it's a bacteria. So we're getting smaller and smaller. You guys getting dizzy? I just want to show you what we're talking about here, the tiniest things. So when we think about cells, can we see cells? Well, if we zoom all the way out, what they show us, the biggest one here, biggest one that we could pretty much see would be like a human egg when we can't. We need to use technology to get an idea of what that is. So I just want to show you just how small that we are talking about, how complex humans and organisms are. Okay, let's go back here. Okay, so cells, we're talking about these tiny little organisms here. Form and function, as you saw in that little example, when we think about a cell, there's multicellular organisms like us, we're made up of so many different types of cells, and they have a special job to do. So organisms have many structures that allow them to move, to swim, to get food, energy. And these structures are their form, and they provide a function. So if we think about it like our thumb, okay? You can see the shape of our, like the hand, and think of the shape of our thumb, and we have what we call an opposable thumb. What that means is that we can grasp things with it. Okay, so the form of our thumb, having that opposable thumb, allows us to hold on. Like, you think my water bottle here, if I didn't have that thumb, my water bottle would just slide right out. So the function, again, is then what it allows us to do. So with our thumb, it allows us to grasp things. And the same thing happens with the cells that we have. Okay, so cells are busy dividing, and they specialize in the many different types of cells. The specialized cells, they perform a specific function, and that function could be, digestion, getting rid of waste, sending messages, reproducing. The structure of those cells is going to depend on what its function is and what it does inside of our body. So there's a direct relationship between what the cell looks like, its form, and what it does, its function. So for example, this comes from in the lesson when it talks about sex cells, so an egg cell and a sperm cell. If we think about a sperm cell, it has a tail. It's like a little fish. And the reason is because the function of the sperm cell is to swim to fertilize an egg. Okay, so if we think about the form of it, it's going to have a tail to allow it to move quickly, to swim, because its function is to fertilize that egg quickly. Another example is we talk about a nerve cell. A nerve cell relays messages. So it sends messages through our body to our brain and back to our body. So if you think about if you are cooking and you touch something hot with your finger, you have nerve cells that are sending messages, relaying messages to your brain so that your brain can then comprehend, understand, oh, that's hot, and it quickly sends the message back to your finger, the cells, to pull it off, to get that off, that hot part. So when we think about the form of a nerve cell, they're very long and they have branches. Think of like sending out messages, branching out, okay? So form and function of a nerve cell, okay? We doing okay so far? Okay, if you've got questions, again, you have that chat box, or if you want to take yourself off of mute, you're welcome to do so as well. Okay, we are going to, I think I wanted to, actually, I want to go to the actual lesson for that. So let's go to that form and function here in the lesson. Okay, so this is biology. This is semester 1, and let's see, it is lesson 1.4. I get lots of questions about this, like, oh, how am I supposed to know? So again, here we can see what I kind of just went over. And then it gives you a website to take a look at. And at this website, it shows us a variety of different types of cells and different types of tissues here, okay? I'm gonna scroll down a little bit farther, and it gives you lots of different examples. So as we are looking at some of, oh, here we go, some of these pictures, it's gonna give you a description. This might look somewhat familiar to you. These are red blood cells. Okay, one, you could say you know this because of the color, red blood cell, but also the shape of it. So we think about form and function. Blood cells, they need to carry oxygen throughout our body, and they're carrying it in these tiny little blood vessels. And so they need to be able to kind of move quickly. Think of like they're riding on like a river, a tube, or a tunnel, and they have to be able to maneuver through. So when you think about their shape, they're more disc-like. They look like they're kind of soft and kind of like they could be somewhat squishy. As we think about muscle tissue, we talk about having bands or striations. As you can see here, here's an example of the cardiac muscle. And it says the fibers are a type of striated muscle found in the heart. So again, it's made of very dense compound tissues pushed in together, okay? What other? We talked about the nerve cell, the same thing. So it's how it's stretching out, sending messages throughout the body. Okay. So if we go back, Okay, so in 1.4.1, sorry guys, form and function, we get some examples that are given to us. And so like here, we can say what type of, well, let's go back down here to number 3 here. What type of cell is this? Okay. And what it wants us to do is explain, to state what type of cell it is, and then what makes us think that, or how did you know based off of its form, what it looks like, would you decide what it is? How did you come up with the conclusion that this is this type of a cell? Okay, so first off, anybody like to share what type of cell that is? There's lots of them in there, but what are these little round things? What type of cell would you think that is? You can type it in. Yeah, thank you. You got it. It's a blood cell. Yep, came in on through a chat. So this is a blood cell, and we're going to call these red blood cells. So as we're putting in our answer here, we would say it's a red blood cell. How do you know? So what type of cell is this? Red blood cell. How do you know? So we just looked at an example of it, but what about its form, the shape of it, the design of it? What about it tells you that it might be a blood cell? We can look at the color of it. Okay, it's red, so that gives us an idea. We know that it's a red blood cell because, again, of the shape. It takes on these little donut disc shapes. So as you can see, this is the outline of a blood vessel. And so again, as they're moving through there, they need to be able to quickly, without using a whole lot of energy, move through these types of vessels. So the shape of it being kind of small and round, squishy looking, allows it to maneuver in through these tubes and tunnels, okay? Another example, what type of cell is this? How do you know? So again, we're looking at that form and we're looking at that function. Okay, brain cell, yeah. Which we could say is type. This is going to be like a nervous cell. Okay, so again, the function of it, as we look at it, you can see all these tiny little branches of it. Okay, so the function, again, is to transmit messages. So the reason why it has these long branches is though it can reach out to the next cell to transfer or relay that message to the brain, which is our command center. And then of course in number 5, what type of cell is this? How do you know? We saw an example of it as we look at the form of it, what it looks like. We can see it has a head, like its body, and then it has a very long tail. Yeah, it's a sperm cell. Thank you for sharing. Yep. And how do we know? Well, the shape of it. So we look at it, it's a sperm cell because it has this long tail, because of course the function of the sperm cell is to swim to meet that egg and fertilize. So direct connection between that form and function. When I see this assignment, a lot of times students will just write down, they'll only do part of the question. So they'll only do, what type of cell is this? And they'll put down sperm cell. But they don't see this other parts. So there's two parts to the question. So make sure that you're answering both parts of it. We think about form and function. What type of cell it is, what is it, and then how do you know? What does it have, or how did you come up with that as your answer? So we can think about the sperm cell. We can think it's a sperm cell because, of course, it has this long tail for swimming. Okay. Neuron, nervous cell, we could think about it has these branches to relay messages. Okay. This one up here is what we call connective tissue. Connective tissue is going to be like what covers up our bones, or what our muscles connect to onto our bones. And with this, we think about the form and the function. What does it look like to you guys? Any characteristics you see? It's pink. It looks like string or thread or spider web. And so when we think about, it's the form and the function of it. The function is to cover, protect, connect. So we think about its form, and we can see it's like a spider web. It stretches across, keeping everything kind of in together. Think of like a thread sewed together. It's connecting everything and keeping it in place, holding it in together. Okay, so 1.4.1, form and function. Two things to really make sure that you're doing on this one is, one, answering what type of tissue or cell you think it is, and then how do you know? So what about its form? What does it have that makes you believe that? So make sure that you are answering those two parts. Okay, let's go back here. What is the importance? We talked about these cells, and we're going to get into tissues here in a moment, but what is the importance? What's in there? You think all organisms are made up of a cell. So what do you think is inside? What does a cell have? Maybe your eyes are glancing farther down into that screen there. Okay. If you said DNA, or if you thought in your mind, oh, there's a nucleus, or you thought there's genes in there, when we think about what's inside of a cell, we think of DNA. So what is DNA? And it's a cell, and it's the smallest structural and functional unit of an organism. It also uses a code that is stored, and that's where the hereditary information is. So what's coding us, the information that was passed down from our parents, it's coded, and it's in what we call DNA. So the code contains information for an organism's growth and for their function. So our DNA has, what our body is going to look like. It has information about genes and cells, thinking about the color of our hair and our skin. If you guys, sorry, just give me one quick second. Sorry, guys. Okay, so DNA is the material that carries all that information about how a living thing will look and what its function is. So, of course, it's super, super, super important to us. And we each have our own DNA. It's very, it's all of our own. So, the structure of DNA. This is kind of hard to think about. I know we've all seen pictures of this kind of double helix ladder looking thing, but most people characterize the shape of a DNA as a twisted ladder. So think about if you were to take this and stretch it out, it would take the shape of a ladder. So take a ladder and twist it. Each side of the ladder is made up of what we call sugar phosphate molecules. And each molecule consists of a sugar called deoxyribose and a phosphate group. So we call those our base pairs. And those are the rungs of the ladder. That's the part that connects the two sides together. And we call them, they're made from nitrogen, so they're nitrogen bases. And thinking about the rungs of the ladder, there's different colors because there's 4 different ones. And this is where we get that code for DNA, okay? So there's 4 different nitrogen bases, and there's adenine, which is what we usually just say A, so we abbreviate them with just the letter. We have adenine, guanine, cytosine, and thymine. These bases are represented, like I said, by the letters A, G, C, and T. And the nitrogen bases in DNA always occur in pairs. That's how we get that ladder. So over here in this image, we can see kind of the coding that happens. Now, they pair, our nitrogen bases always pair with the same other base. So adenine and thymine always pair together. Guanine and cytosine, they always pair together, okay? So we get what we have is like this long kind of code, so to speak, of these different letters in which they go in. So A and T always go together, and G and C always go together. Well, you're probably thinking, okay, well, then everybody's DNA is the same. But it's not, because you can see it can take on different types of, it can change from, you know, AT, you could have AT, 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 or in this case, they show us an example here of AT and then GA, AT. So it changes the code by which base pairs are in order. Okay. Now this is the same for all organisms. Some quick little facts about DNA, and this comes from lesson 1.2 in the actual activity 1.2.1. DNA stands for, this is one of those trivia questions. So you always want to make sure you have this one. And then you're like, well, how do I say it? Sound it out very, very carefully. Deoxynucleic acid, DNA for short. Where is DNA found at? Talking about what is so important. We find DNA in the nucleus of a cell. Nucleus is what we call the command center. And inside that nucleus is there where your DNA is. The correct base pair for the following sequence, this is one of the questions that you have in the lessons, is it gives you a sequence. So it gives you the ladder and tells you what the letters are. So if we have G, C, T, T, we would have to, what would be the other side to that? And we know that guanine pairs with cytosine. So if you have a G, you have to have then a C. If you have a C, it would have to be a G. And then we know thymine goes with the A, adenine. So again, that's what makes up the code, is the way that those base pairs are planned out or mapped out, okay? The next question they ask you, DNA takes on what kind of shape? It's shaped like a ladder. And then the biggest one, why do we care about DNA? What's so important about it? DNA holds all of your hereditary information for that organism, okay? So all your genetic information, all your codes is in that DNA. Okay. DNA versus RNA. There's also a little section that talks about, well, what's the difference between these types? And it has to do with the function of them. Okay, people they look at that and they're like, DNA, well, RNA, they look like they're similar almost, just one letter is different, so they have to be similar. Well, DNA, like we talked about, it codes all the genetic information, and it's the blueprint, so it's like the map of that organism, and again, what that organism is going to pass down. DNA is like a storage device, so think of like a biological flash drive that allows all those codes to be kept and passed down, copied between generations. So your offspring are getting, you know, a set of DNA. RNA functions as the reader that decodes that flash drive, so it interprets the information. So DNA holds it. RNA functions as the readers on, well, how do we make this? Or, you know, how do we send out the messages to do so? They have some differences in their structure as well. DNA is a double helix. RNA is a single strand. I'll show you some examples here in just a moment. what it's made from. They're both made from sugar, so that's again a similarity. But DNA is deoxyribose, whereas RNA is just ribose. The length of it, DNA is very, very, very long, and RNA is much shorter. Base pairs, similarities with the base pairs, but there is one difference, okay? With DNA, we have adenine, thymine, cytosine, and guanine. With RNA, we have adenine, but instead, and we have cytosine and guanine, but instead of thymine, we have a different nitrogen base called uracil. So a little bit different here. Let me go back and show you a little visual of the differences between those. Okay, so some differences here. Here we have DNA, so we can think about double helix, so think about that ladder being twisted, whereas RNA is just one side, one section. Okay, base pairs, again, you can see these three are the same, but the difference is that uracil and that thymine. Okay. Okay, in activity 1.1, DNA versus RNA, it asks you to compare and to contrast RNA and DNA. So when we think again about comparing and contrasting, what is similar, what is different between them? Okay, this is actually from the actual lesson, the directions. It says you can make a list or you can write out your response in sentence. So in the assignment, they give you the option to kind of show your knowledge in the best way that works for you. If you like to make lists, if you want to do a Venn diagram to show similarities and differences, you can do so. I tried to make some type of I wanted it to be a T-chart, and then I couldn't figure out how to put the line in. Sorry. You get it though. So we have DNA, and then we have RNA, and then down here at the bottom I put in some similarities. So again, DNA function stores genetic information. RNA conveys the messages, it decodes that information. DNA is a double strand, RNA is a single. It has thymine as one of its nitrogen bases. RNA has uracil. The sugar it's made from, deoxyribose, and just ribose. Similarities, they're all made from ribonucleic acids, and they have those 3 phosphate bases, cytosine, guanine, and adenine, that are the same. So a couple different differences and similarities. Okay, so we talked about cells, what the importance of cells is because it contains that DNA. Now I want to go into shifting into organisms. Okay, as we think about a living organism and how their bodies are what we say levels of organization, how it's made up, we kind of call that the form and the function. And it's like a building block. We think about it. This picture here shows an example of the organization of a living organism. So we think about the smallest parts of an organism is the cell. And then we're going to start adding more and more and more to it until we reach that organism. Okay, so here's our visual of what we're going to look at. Okay, so an organism starts with the smallest and the simplest form, which is a cell. You think about your body is made up of millions of cells, okay? Multicellular organisms have many cells that work together in specific ways, and each group performs certain types of functions. So we know that in our body, we have different types of cells. You can think about, we have fat cells, we have skin cells, we have blood cells, and all of those cells we can think about work together. In our body, cells that group together, just think about they line up. So you can think about, like a muscle. I have a muscle right there. Your muscle is made up of muscle cells, and those cells combine together to make up what we call a tissue. A tissue is a large group of cells that all have the same purpose or function. So you think about muscle cells is to create muscle, which allows our body to move. You can think about skin cells, the same thing. Skin cells combine together to form skin tissue, which acts as a kind of outside layer, protective layer of our body. So each kind of cell has characteristics such as the shape, size, flexibility, color, texture that make it unique, like we talked about with form and function. Now, nerve cells combine with other nerve cells to make nerve tissue. Muscle cells combine with other muscle cells to make muscle tissue. Bone cells combine with other bone cells to make bone tissue. So you get it, you get the idea. Cells group together to make tissue, okay? So we have cell to tissue, we gotta get to organ. Same thing happens here. An organ is a group of tissues that work together to do a certain type of job. Some of the body's organs include the stomach, lungs, heart, kidneys, brain, and liver. You could think about another organism. Well, how does this relate to other organisms? Think about like a plant. It has roots, stems, fruit, and leaves. Those are organs as well. Okay, so similar cells have the same form and function, grouped together to make tissue. Tissues combine to make what we call an organ. And then, of course, an organ groups together with other organs to create a system. So as we think about the digestive system in our body, it's made up of lots of different organs. Our stomach, our intestines, our mouth, and that creates a system. Organ systems, of course, we think about our body has lots of different systems that make us work. You know, we've got our digestive system, we've got our nervous system, we got our cardiovascular system, our skeletal system, our muscular system. All of those systems then combine together to create an organism as a whole, okay? So we go from cell to tissue to organ systems to a complete organism. You guys with me so far? If you have any questions, you can jump on in, or if you got something to type in there. Okay. So here it kind of gives us a little example from cell to organism. So we think about, we have a cell. Okay, those cells are going to combine to make a tissue. And the tissue is going to combine, this is probably, we're going to say this is a muscle cell is going to combine with other muscle cells to create muscle tissue. Muscle tissue combines with other tissues to make an organ. It's our heart. The heart is going to combine with other organs to create an organ system, the cardiovascular system, so all your blood vessels, your heart. And that cardiovascular system is going to work together with other systems to create that complete organism. Okay. So I talked briefly about cells to organism, the importance of cells with DNA. And then we looked a little bit about how do we get from a cell to an organism? What's the organization? How are they grouped together? How do they build upon each other? Okay, does anybody have any questions about that? Okay, then I definitely would like to take a moment to put out to you guys if you have questions. It could be on this, it could be on a completely different topic, maybe in earth science, it could be from a lesson. Is there anything that you came to this session today looking to get a little bit more information or looking to get an answer on? Again, you can take your microphone off and you can talk out loud using your microphone, or you're welcome to chat, send a little message in there. Yeah, I see we have a hand raised. Do we have a question? If you want to take your
I'm sorry, can you hear me?
I can hear you, yeah.
I'm sorry, I'm not at home, so it's kind of loud. I was trying to wait till all the noise bypassed. I'm sorry, on earth science. And one question that I have is, when I watch videos or I'm going over the lessons and they give the definitions. On the quizzes, the definition seems totally different than what I am actually getting on the video and on the actual what you have to read. Does that make sense? So I guess I'm trying to figure out, how do I actually maybe write the definitions, or do I need to do something different? Because on the quizzes, I feel sometimes totally lost because it seems like it's two different languages.
Okay. Do you feel like maybe from the videos and then from the lesson, is it giving you the same idea, or I mean, I'm sure the definitions they're not going to be word for word, is what I'm saying. Do you feel like they're still giving you the general idea and it's just not specifically word for word the same?
Well, I
Or,
know it's not for word from word. That I understand.
okay.
Maybe just for my brain, it's like two different languages. I have to go back and reread it, relook over it, and just try to compare from what I wrote down and try to understand and break it down. And it does not always work out right. So I guess I'm just trying to figure out exactly how I should go about that.
Okay. I would definitely, like you said, in earth science, you can use like the glossary that they have there with the vocabulary words at the beginning of the units. And then, as you said, in the lessons, it'll describe the word as well. And then you also talked about in the videos, then it kind of gives a different type of description. I would use what they have in the actual lesson, in the vocabulary, and what it says in the lesson. The video, most of them, I would say they come from, a lot of them are YouTube videos, and so it might be just that where the video is coming from, the context could be a little bit different. So maybe they're taking it, a little bit higher level than what we're dealing with, or they could be trying to put it in a different topic. So I think with the videos, it might be could be different. That's just what I'm thinking. What you could do, what I think would be helpful for me, is could you send me an example? Like, could you chat an example of one of the words or an assignment that you saw this in? Because one, I would like to make sure that it is correct, but also then I could get an idea of how to help you better. Does that make sense?
That would actually be great, because I was stuck the day before yesterday, actually, and I went on the tutor website. He didn't know exactly what to even tell me, and I was stuck for hours, and I just finally just had to turn the quiz the way that it was. He gave me an answer, the tutor gave me an answer that it was, and from the video and from the actual definition, all three were different. So I was like, I don't know where nobody is at now. So that's kind of, I just went ahead and went past that. Earth science is much easier now, but it was that particular lesson there that I was literally stuck. I really didn't know what to do. And I'm finding out that it's almost like that from the videos, and then what you guys are giving are sometimes two different things.
Okay. Well, I'm so sorry to hear that you got stuck for that long. Please send it. Am I your science teacher? If I am, send me a chat and I will get back to you as soon as possible. I don't want to hear, oh, I'm always like, no, don't spend too much time being stuck on something to answer. So please,
I know.
reach out to your teachers. Again, whatever your form is, if you chat them, we'll get it. We'll help you out. But if you could, yes, if you remember which one it was, do you know off the top of
I remember.
which one was it? I'll write it down. I'll chat with you about it.
It was actually it was a crossword puzzle.
The crossword puzzle. Okay.
I'm trying to remember. It was the crossword puzzle, and actually it was
principle.
I'm trying to remember. Say that again. I'm sorry.
I've had a couple questions on that one with the crossword puzzle with the definition of cosmological principle, or the Big Bang started with a.
Yes, that was it. And
yeah.
Well,
yeah,
yes,
I had the Big Bang was yeah, that was one. It was Hubble, but the tutor told me it was somebody totally different. And even if you Googled it, it gave you a different name of who it was. And then that long word that you just said, it didn't even fit inside of the crossword.
It has a space.
You had to get the space in it to get it to fit, and
Yeah.
then I was finally
That's
able
what
to
I
get it
did.
to
That's what I
the
did. But
Okay. Well, after this session, I will definitely take a look at that. You guys are giving me great feedback right
The
here.
one
Right?
I was struggling with was the biome quiz, because the only reference that it gave you was a YouTube video, and then even when you did take the quiz, a lot of the references, although a lot of the references were worded differently.
Okay.
So
Biome lesson.
Yep.
yeah, the biome lesson.
Same thing.
Yes.
Yeah, so a lot of the references you would go back into to do it, and the quiz was worded differently.
On the biome lesson, that one was built into the program, the Soft Chalk program, and there was like an interactive book. It was like a photo album that gave you examples of each biome and characteristics. Did you guys see that? Did it? I'm like,
I don't think I saw that. I just saw the YouTube video for it. It was like a Khan Academy YouTube video. That's what I saw.
Okay.
So
I'm gonna write down.
I'll have to
Thank
go
you
back
guys.
to it.
Great to hear this feedback, because yes, if the curriculum is giving you guys some struggles, then I want to definitely check on this and make sure that one, the assignment and the crossword is set up correctly, and the definitions and the answers. And also that the program is working, because I know at that biome one, there was a photo album that went through and gave you some more information on each of the different types of biomes. And then there was the video that kind of give you more visual look of it. Okay. Is it Mika? Is that how I say your name?
Yes, Mika.
Okay. Do I have you? Are you in my science class? Am I your science teacher?
Honestly, I can't remember, so I I don't want to say, but I did. I actually, I really don't even think so, but I did give my teacher 2 messages because,
okay.
you know, even my academic teacher went online, was trying to help me out with and we were all lost. So I'm not really for sure, but when I found out that you were doing tutoring today or the online, I made sure I got online. I just want to make sure, you know, get some tips on, because I'm glad I'm not the only one.
Yes, no, thank you guys for letting me know. Okay, so I made a couple notes there, and then I will check on the curriculum to see where it's at, and then also looking at what happened with those scores and whatnot. And I will get back to both of you guys. If you don't hear from me, I can relay the message to your particular science teacher. Thank you though for letting me know. Oh, thank you for letting me know that one. Otherwise, yeah, I'll be like, wait a minute, I can't find you in there in my chat. The biome quiz, okay. Okay, we will definitely take a look at that. Okay, again, thank you for the feedback on those 2 examples, on those definitions and those 2 assignments. I will check on them. Again, I'm thankful that you guys are letting me know about this. Again, when you're working on this through, like when you're right in the middle of it, again, always send out, you know, a message to your teacher or to anybody here so that we can make sure that, you know, the curriculum is working correctly. Because I'm wondering on the biome one, if that soft chalk little interactive feature is not working. And then we'd have to go and get that fixed. Okay. Did want to spend a little bit of time thinking about a skill and talking about how we organize information. Today we did a little bit about that when we talked about, you know, how organisms are grouped together or how they're made up. So when you're learning new information, or somebody is teaching you, or you've got all this stuff in front of you, say like this collection of pictures, what would be the point on organizing information or organizing anything? Why would we want to? I know in my house, I need to do a better job, of course, because it's always getting so messy. But we think about in our house, we organize, say, like utensils in our kitchen. We don't just, hopefully, we don't just throw everything into a drawer, but rather we group them into like similarities, our forks, our spoons, and our knives. So that, of course, when we go to eat because we're super hungry and we're grabbing that fork, we want to make sure that, you know, we make it as organized and as efficient and as easy as possible. And we can open up that drawer and it's organized and all the forks are together and we can grab that fork that we need. So one reason why we organize information is to make it easier, more efficient. We can see similarities and differences between items. So if we looked at this picture here, how would you guys organize these pictures? Do you see anything that's similar, that's different? Animals, buildings, yeah. So we could look at this and we could look at, and maybe we could say things that are, you know, living and things that are non-living. So we could take these pictures and group them living, non-living. We could say, you know, organisms, and it's like some of these pictures, it reminds me of like travel and the airplane. So there's different ways that we could organize the information for it so that it's easier for us to see similarities, see differences, and kind of compare and contrast the two, so to speak. So when you guys organize, do you have any strategies that you use or any ways that you organize information? It could be in class, could be in your daily life. Well, let me give you a few different ways that we can organize information. And you probably have used these throughout your schooling and in your life as well, because we do organize a lot every day. So we can think about, you know, by categories or by type. We could think about the example I gave with the utensils, or in the type or the outline, we could talk about, like in science, you know, the different types of rocks that there are. We can organize information by time, like by creating a timeline that's chronological, showing how things have changed, or what happened first, you know, the middle of time, and then of course the end of time. We can organize the information as a web. You might have seen in the course, you might have seen something that we call like a food web or a food chain that shows how organisms are interconnected with how they eat in an ecosystem. Think about as a story, you can organize information as a story. It could be a narrative, or you could think about when you're writing a paper, the different parts to a paper. We can organize things alphabetically. Makes it a whole lot easier to find what it is that we're looking for. And then we could also think about like a pyramid, looking at the size. I know the one I always think about is like the food pyramid, showing the different types of foods that we're supposed to eat. And then that pyramid kind of shows us kind of the quantities that we're supposed to try and get into our daily diet. Okay, so some examples that we see in science on how to organize information. We could talk about like what we did earlier today, from cell to organism, looking at the size. So we're talking about something that's simple to more complex. So we can see it's like the building blocks of an organism. How is an organism organized? You start with a cell to tissue to organ system to an organism. So again, that building block from simple to complex. Classification of organisms. When we talk about, how are organisms classified or grouped together? We can say broad to specific here. Have you heard of kingdom, phylum, class, order, family, genus, species? That's the organization of an organism. So when we think about all living organisms are grouped into what we call a kingdom of life. And we know our particular humans, we are in the animal kingdom. And then as we get more and more specific, we get to the actual species. And so humans, we are sapiens. Actually, when we speak about our name, it's the genus and the species together. So Homo sapiens, that's us. So we start off very, very big and broad, and then we get super, super small to one and only specific species like us, humans, Homo sapiens. So another way to organize that information. I put this one in here because I don't know how familiar you guys, if you've ever seen human classification is. And maybe I just opened up something completely different and you're like, what is she talking about? Homo sapiens. But so when we think about human classification, this is just showing how we're grouped together. We are in the animal kingdom. Okay. Our phylum is Chordata, and that's because we have a backbone. A little mini lesson here today. And so other organisms that have backbones would be grouped here. Mammal, we're in Mammalia because we're mammals, meaning we have fur. We're able to produce milk for our young. And we're in the order Primate because we have, like we talked about, that opposable thumb. And then as we get farther and farther down, we get more and more specific to the actual species of us. Think about where we stand upright. Go. Okay. Sorry, a little side tangent there on human classification. Going back to organization. Food chains web, it shows the levels of energy and the interconnectedness. So we're looking at an ecosystem and we're talking about, okay, how is energy spread out through the organisms? And down here at the bottom where we have producers, we can see these producers are feeding all of these organisms here. And we can see how, the different ways, different things, because we know that not everybody eats the same thing. There's the variety. So it's showing the different types of other organisms that are eaten by organisms. An outline, like we talked about in the water cycle. We can organize the information of how the water cycle works into steps or stages. So we could talk about, there's evaporation and condensation, precipitation, runoff, infiltration, percolation is another word for that, in the water cycle. So we can use an outline to kind of give the parts of how that cycle works. Same thing with the carbon cycle. A timeline, again, we can show progression and timeline of Earth's history, when Earth started, oldest fossils known. So we get into multicellular organisms to more complex organisms. So we can get an idea, a visual idea of how the Earth has changed over time. And you think about this, it would be a whole lot easier to see this type of a timeline, a visual growth of the Earth, rather than, if you read a paper of paragraphs that gave you information. So again, the way that we organize the information makes it easier for us to understand and read. Numbered instructions. So when you do a lab, you think about the procedure, or if you are following instructions, like you're making a cake or something like that, we can organize our information into steps. So we know what to do first, how to follow that out to complete the task completely. Notes outline shows similarities and differences. So if you're using, say, like Cornell Notes, you have, you can have two different columns, where you have, the keyword. You can write in your notes, similarities, differences, major characteristics about them, and then you can take that information and you can write up a summary. So when you think about you're learning new vocabulary, I was going back to the one about, thinking about the different types of rocks on Earth. This would be a good example to outline that information so that you get the major characteristics for each of them, and then you can summarize your information all together. Okay, so I just want to show a different variety of different ways that we can organize our information to make it easier for us to learn it, to understand it, to see differences, similarities. And we know that the strategy that we're going to use, or that we use, is going to depend on what that information is. Okay. So just thinking about kind of science skills here. How do we organize information? Okay. I want to go back to questions. Again, I know, like I said, after the session, I will go and take a look at those two pieces. But did anybody else have any other questions? Again, you can unmute yourself, or you can send a chat in. Okay. With these sessions, I appreciate if you ever have a topic, thinking about next week, what I'm going to do a mini lesson on. If you have something in your mind that you would like to see, please send me a message, email, chat me. I would love some ideas on what you would find to be helpful, to give you a little bit more information or get your questions answered. And same thing as you come to the next sessions. If you do have questions, come prepared. In the meantime, if you have questions or you're stuck on something, please reach out to me or to your teacher so that we can help you out as well. Okay, I'll be following up with a couple of you guys here in just a moment. Once I get out of this session, I'll go in and I'll take a look at those too, and then get back to you guys. But again, I appreciate the feedback, definitely. We need to know if there's something going on with it.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. You guys have a great day, and thank you for joining. Again, we are here for you guys to help you, so please reach out to us. Have a great day, you guys.
All right, thanks. Have a great day. Bye.
Bye.